Hello everyone, this is Tom from TOR-Talk.
What's up? I'm Tim.
Tim and myself are currently heading to BioWare Studios.
Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to TOR-Talk, the video cast number 1. We're here at the Fan Site Summit, and we're interviewing Mr. Georg Zoeller. How's it going?
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine.
Fantastic. Alright, so let's get started. Recently on the forums, there's been a few threads going around about the whole dual speccing kind of issue. And you've been talking about how, as of right now, it's not really planned for us to be able to do that. And it may change later on in the future. And we're not allowed to, right now, switch between advanced classes. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
No?
No.
Really?
So, as for, to go through terminology very quickly, I think advanced classes in our game are much closer to what you would look at classes in a traditional MMO out there. A Jedi Consular, for example, the difference between a Shadow, which is kind of a stealthy, potentially high DPS kind of character, versus a Sage, who is more like a traditional glass cannon kind of approach, is very, very strong. That said, we are looking at allowing you to change advanced classes.
Okay.
But it would definitely something that we wouldn't want you to take lightly.
Yeah.
So it would be probably expensive to do
Okay.
so.
Okay.
At current, the plan is we will probably allow it, but it will not be able to do. You will not be able to do this very easily. Like, it's not something your character will do every day.
Okay, so we're not, so the two advanced classes, and there's obviously trees in both advanced classes.
Yes.
We cannot, say, put talents into one tree and then just whenever we want, switch to a new tree, like instantly.
So to talk about skill point respec,
Yeah.
which is basically you get all your skills back,
Okay.
and then you can place them
Okay,
anew.
so we can't do
that
two-
is in the game. You can respec. It requires you to go to your capital world, so you can't do it in the field or in the PvP war zone. But you can do it by going to your capital world, and the pricing of that is being adjusted. We haven't come to any final conclusion yet about just how often or how prevalent we want that to happen.
Okay.
The traditional kind of dual spec question of can I have two specs and then switch between them, at this point that is not planned for the game. We think it's the kind of feature that definitely warrants looking at as your game matures, as you have more people towards the end levels. And I think it makes sense to look at that then. As for the level up experience, we do not think it's a big deal that it isn't there. In fact, it would probably be damaging to the game.
Oh, okay.
For early end game, after we launch these kind of things, we don't think it is in any shape negative for our game that we do not offer this at this point. But again, we're looking at that. We will judge demand as the game matures, and I think we can react to that if needed.
Fantastic. So we know that there are a few developers from Mythic that is also working on the Old Republic. Is there going to be any kind of like similarities between the two combat systems in both games, in Warhammer Online and the Old Republic?
So the guys from Mythic, we have a bunch of guys from Mythic. BioWare Mythic is part of the BioWare family. We have people from Edmonton. I myself are from Edmonton earlier on. So we trade the designers pretty deliberately between projects. But as to will that translate into similarities, you can ask the lead PvP designer tomorrow, I guess, about these things. Gabe is one of the people from the Warhammer team.
Okay.
And he's leading the PvP efforts up here.
Okay, cool. Cool. So last month, we seen the launch of the Guild HQ system. And when you're creating a guild, you have the 3 servers to choose from: PvP, PvE, and role-playing. Is there any chance at all that we might see any more development on the RP, PvP, like any more servers like that?
I think you'd have to ask someone else for that.
Okay. Okay.
I'm the combat guy. I'm,
Well,
violent. And
We've said in the past that, don't worry about telling the camera. We've said in the past that our server setup. So they're going to be similar to what you'd expect.
Okay.
Classic.
Sweet. Good. How much effect does story have on combat? Is there anything that you have to do for a specific class that is restricted because of the story? You can't do something because of the story? Is there some kind of mold you have to follow?
So you can't play the Old Republic while avoiding story. That at least in your level up experience, the central thread that goes through the entire game that you follow along is your character's story. So in order for you to progress through the game, you will have to expose yourself to the story.
Yeah.
That says there's a pretty healthy amount of combat involved in that story. Conflicts in the Star Wars universe are rarely solved with diplomacy. So there's a good amount of combat that you will do while doing that.
Okay.
Will you be required, let's say, to grind story? Probably not. I don't think that's even necessarily possible.
Yeah.
But in order to follow through the game, a good part of your quest that you're doing are part of your character's story.
Datacrons have also been kind of like a hot topic on the forums, and we talked about it with Daniel earlier. But being the combat kind of guy, you know that the Datacrons, when we find them, are going to be kind of affecting our stats, right?
Yes.
So, is there kind of an issue with, and I'm not really talking about balancing, but is it going to be a problem, do you think, with those who choose to find Datacrons over those who don't? Are those that do find bad Datacrons, are they going to have a severe advantage? Because some people are thinking, if I find these Datacrons, am I going to have
advantage
this huge, over somebody who doesn't even find success
in PvP or PvE
PvP,
or
PvE, anything in general? I mean.
So I think we've confirmed a number of things already on the forums about Datacrons. Their number is likely to be in the single digits, with scaling with the size of the planet. So earlier planets will have fewer, later planets or larger planets will have more of them. The cumulative effect, if there was a character to completely ignore Datacrons from start to finish, versus a character that would take every single one, would be noticeable. But it would still hopefully be under the threshold that can be overcome by skill.
Okay.
So if you had two characters come at each other and fight it out, there would be stats-wise an advantage, obviously, on the person that has more stats or better stats. But the overall effect that Datacrons have on your character should be below what can be compensated for skill.
Fast-paced combat. There is no auto attack in the game.
That is correct.
And that's awesome. Now, is the fast-paced combat going to be sort of like Dragon Age 2? Because from Dragon Age Origins, we kind of went from not really turn-based, but it was a lot slower combat style. And then we got into Dragon Age 2, and it was really quick, really kind of mashing buttons, so to speak, in between actual abilities that you got to use. Are we going to see something like that in the Old Republic, or is it just kind of like...
So I have to confess, I have not even finished Dragon Age 2.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard for me to answer. What we're trying to do is you fight more enemies with more powerful abilities in a shorter amount of time, or at least the equal, if not shorter amount of time than you are used to from a traditional MMO. We've done very deliberate changes, like the removal of auto attack, the introduction of the flurries where you're shooting multiple bolts at once, and very highly movement-intensive abilities like the force charge, the leap abilities, and very strong ballistics that make people fly through the battlefield and against walls and these kind of things, to give you a more fluid and faster combat experience in the traditional MMO framework. We're definitely not trying to build an action game. If you've played DCU, perhaps, that's not what we're going for.
Okay.
We're trying to retain a traditional MMO combat system, but we want to make the most polished and visually appealing version of it, and we want it at the same time not to fight you when you are trying to be reactive.
Okay.
So you can talk to Gabe about how that is achieved in PvP. There's certain differences where while we have what you would call auto attack in PvE, we do not have it in PvP. Sorry, auto attack, auto facing.
Yeah.
Kind of mechanics. So there's some very deliberate changes between the two systems.
Okay.
So the player isn't being fought by the system.
Okay. Okay. So how are you guys making sure that all 8 classes kind of feel different from each other? Because, you know, the Trooper and the Bounty Hunter, they're sort of, you know, heavy tank range classes. And then but they kind of play different because, you know, the Trooper uses ammo style and the Bounty Hunter uses, you know, the cooldown. But we kind of see a lot of similarities between the Inquisitor and the Counselor.
We, in general, each class has their opposite on the other faction. And in terms of balance, we're trying to keep them close in terms of the utility they have and their damage potential. But we're also trying to keep a certain level of diversification. Like if you play a Consular versus an Inquisitor, it's visually very, very different. You have lots of lightning kind of abilities and a very Palpatine-esque style of combat on your Inquisitor, while the Consular is a lot about using the Force for telekinetics and these kind of things, at least in certain advanced classes.
Okay.
I would expect that a player that, let's say, has played an Inquisitor and then maybe wants to make a Consular character and needs some more reason than story to make that choice. There's the additional choice of your advanced class, obviously, that you can make on top of it. And in some cases, there is deviations between the full mirror of classes. Like the Bounty Hunter and the Trooper, for example, you can't like paint a jetpack on a Trooper, right, or a flamethrower. So there's differences in range at that point that translate into some differences in gameplay.
Okay.
We try to keep those controlled for PvP.